Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 68 of 2019. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at The Odds Breakers. And follow us on social media /The Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by MyBookie.ag. For a 50% sign-up bonus, please visit MyBookie. Use the promo code The Odds Breakers. Terms and conditions apply. If you'd like to help us out and sponsor our podcast, please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, and become a member. For $17.99 a month, you can get my plays in premium plays before the line moves. For $2 more, you can have all that and become a patron subscriber. Get the podcast a little bit early. And if nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a Free Picks newsletter subscriber. And the Free Picks have been killing it lately, by the way. But we have a fantastic show for you today because Kyle Hunter from Hunter Sports Picks is back to break down college football, Week 13, and a little bit of men's basketball. Men's basketball is off to a great start. Very shaky first couple plays, but then I hit a bunch of in a row, like 4 or 5 plays in a row, and we're profitable. Very happy about that. Just nailed the Maryland under and ready for some more. Love college basketball. That's my other specialty. I would say college football is my number one specialty, and college basketball is right there at number 2. NFL would be number 3. That's for myself. Other handicappers specialize in other things or sometimes just many things. We added some pages to theoddsbreakers.com. Still making some updates to it, but I added a page that shows where our partners' websites are, where you can get free picks. It's called Partner Pick Sites under Bets, Info, and Trends. And for our premium members, I am adding premium handicapping sites. These are sites that I use and would be free to you to handicap games. Some I pay for, but these are the free ones that are great, and the statistics are fantastic, and I use that probably daily when I'm going through the cards. So adding that for premium members so you can obviously make a lot of your own educated decisions. Before I get Kyle on, I'd like to go over a dream scenario for Wisconsin. And obviously, this is most likely not going to happen. But after you hear it, you might think it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. After Wisconsin lost to Illinois and then obviously got our asses kicked at Ohio State in the rain, most Badger fans pretty much wrote out of any chance of making the college football playoffs. But lots of things have happened. Obviously, there's no undefeated teams in the Big 12. There's no undefeated teams in the Pac-12. And I kind of came up with a dream scenario. I know it's unrealistic, so you don't have to beat me up too much on Twitter or anything. But this is not that crazy to think about. So what if Oregon loses to Oregon State and then beats Utah in the Pac-12 championship? Well, you have Oregon with a tough loss against Oregon State, and they don't have any huge wins, being the Pac-12 has been, undervalued, and I'm not saying they should be undervalued. I'm just saying they are undervalued. And that also puts Utah with 2 losses at USC and in their championship. So each team would have 2 losses. What if Alabama loses to Auburn? We know Auburn is not that bad of a team. And now Alabama is going to the Iron Bowl this year, away game without Tua Tagovailoa. All right. So that is certainly not out of the realm of possibility. Now, of course, those two losses against LSU and Auburn wouldn't be looked at as bad losses, but at the same time, they wouldn't be a conference champion. What if Georgia makes it? Well, they already made it to the SEC championship, but they get beat by LSU. Well, Georgia would have a bad loss at home against South Carolina and lose their championship game. LSU's undefeated. What if Oklahoma loses one more game? Well, they have a pretty tough TCU team on deck. They have their rival, Oklahoma State, which is a ranked team. And then they're going to have to face most likely Baylor again in the championship. Very possible Oklahoma loses one more game. And what if Ohio State somehow overlooks Michigan, loses to them, and then loses to the Badgers if they win out in the Big Ten championship? Now, Ohio State's favored by 18 against Penn State. Wisconsin's favored by 24 against Purdue. You have to assume those wins. But at the same time, even if Ohio State wins out and loses to Wisconsin and the rest of that stuff happens, there's two slots open. You have LSU in, you have Clemson in, right? But do you put a 2-loss Alabama that's not a conference champion in? Do you put a 2-loss Oregon in that is a conference champion in a weaker conference? Do you put Georgia in for making it, but they lost at home to South Carolina? And do you put Oklahoma in it if they have 2 losses? Okay, so even if Ohio State loses to Wisconsin, but that's their first loss, how do you not put Wisconsin in as a Big Ten champion after they beat Michigan, after they beat Michigan State, after they beat Iowa, after they went to Nebraska and won, which, preseason looked good, and after they beat Ohio State on a neutral field? That's the big question. And so, not likely at all, but certainly not crazy far-fetched. One thing I do like about what Ohio State's doing, and this is completely talking as a Big Ten fan, they are pissed at College Game Day. They've been throwing some shade at them, and I'm really curious if you're going to see some shenanigans on Saturday. Ohio State fans are more anti-ESPN than a lot of Badger fans are, because they believe that there's a huge SEC bias. Now, when you see the college rankings, most of these pundits, get their information from ESPN, look at their FPI, and then kind of, put their own spin to it. But you have teams like Oklahoma that lost to Kansas State ahead of Penn State, who only lost to at Minnesota, and Minnesota was undefeated. Why is Oklahoma higher than them, right? Why? You have Alabama that has no real quality wins. Yeah, they have a great loss against LSU, but they didn't beat anybody, and they're ahead of Penn State, ahead of Minnesota. So I understand what Ohio State's saying. They're saying we're going to beat a number 9 Penn State team that maybe should be a number 5 Penn State team. You're kind of trying to set this up for 2 SEC teams to be in the championship, and I can't disagree with them. So Ohio State fans are pissed, and you should saw the Twitter account for Game Day. Ohio State fans really stood up and throw a lot of shade towards ESPN, and it's what they should do, because I believe in equality and fairness. And to be honest with you, that I like an 8-team college playoff would clean all of this crap up. Let's get into some college basketball and college football with Kyle Hunter. Now, I'm very happy to welcome back a grade A professional handicapper who is off to a fantastic start this year in basketball, by the way. You know him as Kyle Hunter. You can follow him on Twitter at Kyle Hunter Picks and check out his plays at huntersportspicks.com. Kyle, it's getting cold outside, my man. Good thing your plays are red hot. How are things going? Already started up in basketball?
Yeah, it's been a really good start here. First of all, thanks for having me back on. Always good to be on the show. I started out college basketball 2-5. I was pretty disappointed. Then I ran off 10 straight wins in a row. 13-7 on the year so far. 11-2 and my last 13, and the 2 that lost were actually unders that went into overtime. So, been some good winning here of late. Been on a really nice run. 16-5 in my last 21 plays overall. Swept the board in the NFL this past weekend. So, definitely been on a nice little heater. I've been in this long enough to know that there's going to be ups and downs, and I always tell all my clients that. But it's certainly nice when things are going well.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw that your weekend was fantastic. Just smoked it. Great statistics there, and 13-7. That's a fantastic start. There's a lot of people that had a rough first day. I had to play on Michigan State against Kentucky because of their return in production. I lost it, but I went on I'm on a slight little streak myself that brought me back in the black and a little bit more. So that's fantastic, and we both know, like you said, it's what you do for the long run, and you have a fantastic track record. So no worries there. You're definitely the best I know at over-unders, and every year you prove it, Kyle. So I have to ask you, what is the statistics of the over-unders that already started in college basketball with the rule changes? And just for you listeners out there, I'll remind you that the three-point line was brought back, I believe, 1.7 feet, and the shot clock after an offensive rebound is now 20 seconds instead of 30. Correct?
That's correct, yeah. To be honest with you, going into the season, there was some unknown based on this. I wasn't exactly sure what this was going to do. I don't really like unknown because, I have a system down good with the previous rules, but, it's ended up to where I could tell that the trends were coming to the under pretty heavily. You can see that a lot of these games have gone very far under the total. These have not been close. The closing line, the unders are 357, overs are 275. That's 56.49% unders. I think it's important to note, too, that this is on the closing line. If you watch the odds board, and I'm sure you watch it quite a bit like I do, almost always have the odds board open and just kind of watching how the lines move. The opening line would have done far better for the under than this. So you're talking 56.49% unders, even though people are betting the number down pretty consistently across the board. So everybody at this point realizes that the under has been the way to go based on the rule changes. I also think it's interesting to note that there have been less fouls called here early in the season than there were in some of the past years. I know that sometimes they've had specific rules that they want to try to implement, and refs at the beginning of the season call a lot of fouls based on that rule. That hasn't happened so far this year. So I think that's interesting. You're certainly still going to get some games where the refs, there's a big ref show and they just foul. But,
yeah.
And those are really frustrating. I mean, even just as a fan, you hate to just see a game be a free throw fest the entire game. But, in general, I would say that what your listeners need to know is if you like an under, I think you want to play it pretty fast. You don't want to wait around and take it right before the game, or you're going to get 2 or 3 points worse. In some cases, even more than that. If you like an over, more times than not, you probably want to wait and play that the day of the game, pretty close to game time.
Yeah, that's some great points there. It's interesting seeing you want to take the over late. It used to be the other way around.
Right.
I noticed the lines are starting to get hammered. I wonder if the books are made whole because they're still throwing out lines based on numbers based on last year a little bit. So I think you're going to see them adjust as well and go a little bit lower. And I'm curious to see what happens there. But at the same time, these rule changes, it was probably a smart move for the NCAA. Now, it does hurt teams, in my opinion, that, aren't as talented, that relied on a closer three-point shot, just using a swing type of offense and a pack line defense where they didn't have to go out too far to the perimeter. Now they have to go farther out to the perimeter, and the guys like, last year's John Morant, Howard from Marquette, they have a bigger driving lane, and it kind of favors the 4- and 5-star recruits. And I think it's a smart move for the NCAA just because they need to keep their viewership up. Players are going to be leaving after high school again soon. And the NBA summer league's really picking up. I think the minor leagues are starting to get bigger in the NBA. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that, you're right as far as who it hurts. I think that some of these teams who relied on having these shooters that would really just keep them in games that they're not as talented as the other team. It's harder for them now because they're back a decent amount farther shooting those 3-pointers. I would say that you've got some teams that if you go through and handicap these teams pretty closely, I think that you can find some teams that you think it would hurt. Like you said, I do think it hurts some teams on defense as well because, they're trying to play a zone or, pack in that lane. And now, you have to stretch that defense out or you have to give the other team open three. So, we'll see over time. There hasn't been that many games so far as most teams have played 4 games or something like that. So, it's hard to take too much out of that, but at the same time, you can definitely tell that there are going to be some teams who benefit from this rule change, and you can tell also that the unders have been the way to go so far. One other point I want to make briefly is that your listeners should definitely pay attention to whether they are neutral site games or whether they're at a normal gymnasium, a home court situation, because these neutral games have gone under far more than the regular games have.
Well, there you go. The neutral games where it's kind of a foreign court to both in a way.
Right.
Totally agree with that. And apparently the 3-point line going farther back has more of effect than a shorter shot clock off an offensive rebound is probably the summary of what we're trying to say as far as right now. And we'll see when the bookmakers adjust, my man. Well, hey, why don't you give us a quick preview, if you can, on a men's conference that you've done a little research for. Maybe give us, our listeners, a few tidbits that they can take into the betting season.
Well, I mean, me, if you tell me to when you sent me the notes, you said, let's put together, a preview of a conference. And, I kind of asked you, is it okay if I go pretty far under the radar here? I think you probably knew I wasn't going to send back, the Big Ten or the SEC or something like that.
No, I didn't expect you to go over the ACC or anything, Kyle. But
right.
That's exactly why we need you, because that's where a lot of the value comes in. Is 353 teams, these smaller conference. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, I've got the Big West. We're going to talk about a conference where I've really made quite a bit of money over the years, and I've even had people ask me before, why do you kind of consider yourself a specialist in the Big West? You definitely don't live in that area, and I don't. I'm from Ohio. This is not a area where I'm right around there, but, you can still research that conference pretty closely, and it's one that's way under the radar. I'm going to just talk about every team here really briefly. UC Irvine's always been the team to beat here of late. Max Hazard transferred, so they have a little bit less firepower on offense. They're always a really good defensive team. My question about them, do they have enough offense? I think UC Irvine is the team that still has a target on their back because they've been so good the last few years. I think they're a little bit less talented than they have been some of these past few years. It maybe gives an opportunity for someone else. To me, the team that is really balanced right behind them is UCSB. Santa Barbara is a team, really balanced team. I think they're good on offense and on defense. Veteran backcourt. Heidegger's a really good player, a good shooter from 3-point range. I think he's a good team leader as well. And I see the Gauchos as probably the team that if I had to pick one team to win the Big West right now, that's who I would take. So you might be able to find some value there because I don't think they would be considered the favorite here in this league. And they haven't been off to a great start. I will say that obviously the Big West in general is not a great conference. So, I'm not saying any of these teams are tremendous teams. I'm just saying in a relative ATS standpoint, this is a team that I think could be pretty good. One that's important to point out is Cal State Northridge. I don't know if I'm getting the name right or not, but Lamine Diane, academically ineligible, really huge hit to the team, 24.2 points per game and 11.8 boards per game last year. Those are really tremendous numbers. Best player in the conference, certainly, not even close. He's ineligible academically right now. That's a really huge hit to this team. They go from being a top 2 or 3 team in the league to being middle of the pack at best. To me, Northridge is a team that you either pass on their games right now or you look to fade them. I certainly wouldn't would not want to back them at this point. So definitely keep that in mind. If you haven't researched this conference much, keep in mind that Northridge is without their star player. Hawaii, the next team I've got here, a team I'd look to fade when they're on the mainland. This is a team that has done pretty well at home, not usually very good at traveling, kind of similar to the football team at Hawaii, especially on the second end of those back-to-backs. They'll play some games where they play on Thursday night and then again on Saturday. It's a lot of travel for a team from Hawaii, and they're usually not very good in that second game, so that's something I'd want to keep in mind. Cal State Fullerton. Fullerton lost their top 2 scorers from a year ago. They're going to have to win with defense this year. I would look to play some unders with Fullerton. I think that while they play at a decent tempo, I don't think they'll be efficient on offense, and I think that they'll still work hard on defense. I think there could be some value on the unders with Fullerton moving forward. Long Beach State, far less talented than Long Beach State was a few years ago. They want to play really fast, but they're not efficient enough on offense. Not a team I'm very interested in backing this year. I just think that, some people will want to bet Long Beach State because a few years ago they were a good team. I don't think they're the same team that we remember from a few years ago, so I'd be careful with them. UC Riverside, unique team in that they're going to stall as much as they can. Some of the stats looking at UC Riverside so far this year, using almost 23 seconds of the shot clock on average. It's really, really amazing. You're not going to see that slow of a tempo. This is a team that really, really is looking to keep the game low scoring. If they're favored or even a short underdog, I'd look to play unders with them. Obviously, if they're a big underdog and they're playing against a team that's a lot better than them, be careful with the under because, if they're behind by 20 points, they can't keep just holding the ball all the time. So I know it's a basic thing, but some people still don't handicap that one too well. So keep that in mind when you're looking at games like this. But Riverside is an under team. They want to be an under team. UC Davis, a really short team. Only one guy that's going to play regularly that's over 6'5". They're going to be beaten by teams with a strong inside presence. So I would look to go against them when they play a team that has a really good inside presence against UC Davis. Final team here in this conference, Cal Poly. A really fascinating team. This team probably fascinates me the most of any team. They're not really good. It's more that they're coached by a Fullerton assistant from last year. He starts this initial press conference of the year by essentially kind of bashing their Cal Poly's coach from last year and then kind of walking it back. He promised that, now we're going to start playing hard defense and we're going to actually work hard on the court. And then he kind of goes back and says, I respect the previous coach. He did a great job. It's pretty rare that you'll actually see that, out in public. But, it kind of, he feels like he kind of slipped, he says, oh man, that guy wasn't even getting him to play hard defense. But I definitely will. And I think Cal Poly could be a team to play some unders with too, because it appears that he's correct that they are going to work harder on defense than last year. So I think Cal Poly could be a good under team based on the fact that they were just so terrible on defense the last couple seasons. So there's a look at the Big West Conference, which is certainly way under the radar.
Well, fantastic, my man. Yeah, it sounds like in his job interview, he said how terrible things have been running, how I'm going to change it. Then all of a sudden, he backs off a little bit. If you're the guy that you're the athletic director there, you'd be like, huh? What's going on over there?
Right.
No, that's fantastic. And Kyle, we know that you're good at the Big West because you stay up till the wee hours in the morning and actually are able to watch these West Coast games, man. So what a great breakdown. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Last question for college basketball. And I asked you I asked you last year the same question. I think it was a little maybe a little later in the year. It might have been December. I can't remember. But you gave us Utah State as that sleeper. I said, what's the under the radar type team? And not only did they dominate ATS throughout the year, they also made the NCAA tournament, which was a fantastic call on them. And so I have to ask you again, I know it's early, what team do you think can make some noise this year in the non-Power 5 conferences? Who would that team be? Who's the Missouri State or Utah State of this year?
I'm going to take a team that's a little farther under the radar than Utah State. Obviously, Utah State playing in a fairly big conference, and yet, but they were a team that people didn't realize was as good as what they were. I'm going to go to the SoCon and take East Tennessee State. I really like Steve Forbes as a coach. I think he's done a really, really good job everywhere he's went. This is a veteran team now. They have Jeremy Rodriguez and Bo Hodges. They're 11th, according to KenPom, in minutes continuity. So they have a lot of the same team back from last year. This team lost some really close games last year in the SoCon. And if you look at the SoCon, this has been a pretty good conference. Wofford was really good. East Tennessee State, Furman's a good team. Under the radar, the SoCon is pretty good. I think East Tennessee State's going to have a nice season this year. Even their loss here at Kansas this week, a 12-point loss at Fall Gallon is a good showing for East Tennessee State, certainly. I mean, that's a tough place to play. I think that East Tennessee State's one of those teams that could have a really good season. I would expect them to do well ATS. And they're also one of those teams that if they do make the NCAA tournament, nobody's going to want to play them in that first game. I think they'll be dangerous.
Yeah, man, great call. East Tennessee State under the radar. Well, they play one of the worst teams on Saturday in Delaware State, so we'll see.
Yeah.
I think they should be favored by something like 30. So we'll see where that line comes out. But we will be keying in on East Tennessee State. Thank you very much for that. Well, let's get right into a few games this week in college football, Kyle. And I think I'm going to start out with I believe it's a Thursday game. We have NC State versus Georgia Tech, and this spread. I might be a little off on these spreads. When I prepared for this podcast, I wrote them down. I noticed some movement. I wrote down -2. They're favored by over-unders about 47.5. I know not the greatest game that you want to watch, but is this a game worth putting a little bit of money on?
Yeah, from a watchability standpoint, this would not rank very high on my list. That's for sure. And to be totally honest with you, some of these games I would rather just bet and not watch it. So I don't think I'll watch this game. I'm not sure that I'll bet this one either. I'm seeing right now mostly 2.5s and 47. If you look at the tickets so far, 59% of the bets are on NC State. So pretty clearly there's been at least some sharps on Georgia Tech because the line's gone from -1 to 2.5. So Georgia Tech, not really a team I'd be excited to lay points with. I know they've been playing better here lately. At the same time, they haven't been in this role. Do we know that they can actually win when they're favored? I don't think they've proven that in any way so far this year. I think they're a well-coached team that's going to get better with time. I think North Carolina State's offense has just been so bad this year that it's hard to want to back them. I think my biggest lean in this game would probably be the under. I don't know that I'll play it, but you take these two offenses in the ACC, they're averaging 4.91 yards per play and 4.75 yards per play. So really weak offensively. NC State's been the worst of those two offenses in the league. NC State has no passing game. If they can't run, they're not going to be able to do much at all. Georgia Tech, a team that doesn't really have a great identity on offense. I wouldn't say that I love these two defenses either, but if you look at their stats defensively, they're a lot better than they are on offense, at least. I would say that this game is one where, it's hard to take a side. I mean, maybe you have an opinion on the side, but if you look at the turnover margin, I will say that, both of these teams have really shot themselves in the foot with -11 turnover margin for NC State, Georgia Tech -5. That can really hurt you a lot. At this point, if I had to take a side, I'd probably take Georgia Tech. But like I said, I'm not really excited to lay points with a Georgia Tech team that has not been in this role. I think that this could be an ugly game, so I'm going to lean to the under in this one. Well, Kyle, of course, I have a side in this, and it's not, and I didn't want to. I really did not want to play this game, but I kind of have to because I kind of put a bunch of stuff together. And it might make sense, it might not. But for one, NC State's a dog at Georgia Tech. You wonder, Georgia Tech with, 3 wins so far, how many people are going to be showing up to watch them? I don't know.
But it hasn't been a good year for them at all. Of course, it's that rebuilding year. They were an option team last year, as we all know, until Paul Johnson left. NC State, they're still higher in my power ratings, and they're a dog. At Georgia Tech, and I like I said, I wonder how much of a home field advantage they're going to have there. And number two, NC State can actually still make a bowl game. They still can get up to 6 wins, I believe, and Georgia Tech can't. They're out. They're done. So I'm asking if Georgia Tech's motivated here. I know NC State should be. Otherwise, it's a serious coaching problem if they're not. Number 3, Georgia Tech has Georgia on deck. And it's not like they're going to expect to win that game, but you know how kids are. I mean, they're going to wish that they can, and they might be thinking ahead to that. So that's another factor I had to factor in. NC State's still 0.8 net yards per play better than Georgia Tech, and their defense is a little bit better on paper. So, with all those things, it made me have to make a small bet on NC State, and I guess maybe it'll keep me interested on Thursday a little bit. But, it's an ugly one, Kyle. I definitely agree with you, and not by any means a large play. So we'll see if I'm right about some of the things I said about. Let's move into the next game then. Colorado State versus Wyoming. Wyoming is -7 at home. Over-under is about 51. And I'll just quickly go first here. Wyoming, as everyone knows, a very tough place to play. It can get very windy there. I like the way Colorado State has been playing, Kyle. But the matchup here really worries me because Colorado State's weakness is against the run, giving up over 5 yards per rush, while Wyoming thrives on the run. They do it about 70% of the time they're running the ball. So in a windy stadium, I almost think Wyoming might be the side here. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I got a little bit more in-depth thoughts on this game than I did on the previous one. I would say that, compared to the other one, I think this could be an interesting game. Colorado State and Wyoming, pretty good rivalry. These two teams don't like each other very much at all. Really not terribly far apart, kind of that border rivalry game. So you've got, so far, 49% of the bets on Colorado State, 70% of the money on Colorado State. So some sharp money on Colorado State. I'm a little bit torn on the side here because I like Colorado State as a team. I think that they might be a little bit undervalued. I agree with what you just said there. When you look at this game and break it down a little bit more, you're worried because you think, well, Colorado State's pass defense has been pretty good, but that doesn't matter too much here because Wyoming doesn't throw the ball. Chambers got hurt. Vanderwall is not a very good quarterback for Wyoming, and in general, I would not want to lay points with Wyoming. I hate to lay a full touchdown with a team that plays a lot of close games, is going to run consistently. Wyoming is 6-4 ATS. Wyoming has been living right. Let's just be honest. I mean, they have gotten some very fortunate covers. They're +8 turnover margin. Colorado State -8. In general, Colorado State, the team that I would rather want to back, and I would say, honestly, if I still had to bet this game on a side, I would probably take Colorado State just because, I feel like this should be a close game. But I think I like the under a little bit here. Mm-hmm. If you get a Wyoming game at 51 points, this is a spot where they're going to be pounding the ball consistently, running it up the middle. Long, very slow drives. They're 105th in the nation in tempo. They use 28.5 seconds in between plays. So, Colorado State's a little bit slower than average as well. This is a Wyoming defense that is good. They're 28th in the country in yards per play allowed. Very good against the run. And like you said, the other thing is the weather can always be an issue here. As I look at it right now, 23 degrees and 11 miles per hour wind for this game. So definitely really cold and a bit windy. So keep an eye on that as we get closer to it. We'll see if that forecast changes at all. But the wind and the cold could be at least a little bit of a factor. 51, 50.5 the total. Certainly 51, a pretty key number. I wouldn't be too shocked if this 51 total goes down a little bit here before the game. I would say I lean a little bit Colorado State here just because I don't want to lay points with Wyoming that plays a lot of close games. Like you, I'm a bit concerned about the matchup. And like I said, I kind of lean to the under based on the fact that both teams play slowly and Wyoming's going to take so much time.
Yeah, I didn't play this side either. And what does worry me is why is there sharp money on Colorado State that brought it from +7 and looks like it's down to +6.5 in some books. I wonder why that is. It confuses me a little bit because Wyoming is such a great home field advantage. I would have expected the sharp money to be on Wyoming, and it's not. So I'm going to wait on this one and think more about it personally. So great points there. And yeah, the under, if Colorado State has if they stack the box any bit, you would think that under should be able to hit. As long as there's not some crazy turnovers that might, put that thing over. So good call on that one, man. Let's move on to a bigger game, Kyle. And I guess for one team, it's kind of big. Oklahoma State versus West Virginia. West Virginia is about +7, +7.5-ish, depending upon where you're looking. The over-under is 60.5. Oklahoma State's had some ups and downs this year. West Virginia's win against Kansas State was fake news. I mean, they were outgained by over 100 yards and still won the game. But, I wonder if there's a letdown to that. Oklahoma State should handle this team well, but are they looking ahead to Oklahoma? I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I like this game pretty well. I would say that Oklahoma State's a team that I like to be high on usually. I think Mike Gundy's an underrated coach. You go back and look at the ATS records, coach by coach. Gundy has done really, really well ATS. I feel like his teams are underrated pretty consistently. Again, Oklahoma State, a pretty good team here this year. I have Oklahoma State over 7 and 7.5 wins, so I'm hoping they at least win one of these last couple games. It better be this one because they play Oklahoma in that last game.
Oh yeah,
definitely don't trust them to win that one. But this is an Oklahoma State team that has been really good running the football. Hubbard has been so good for them. They're 6th in the country in yards per carry, 5.63 yards per rush. Spencer Sanders has been pretty good at quarterback. He's a freshman. He makes some mistakes, but this is an Oklahoma State team that, again, this year, 8-2 ATS. So they've been really good, way better than most people thought they would be. They're 13th overall in yards per play. And if you look at Oklahoma State, how are they getting so many points and being so good? They have busted a lot of really, really big plays this year. 50, 60-yarders. They're tops in the country in both of those. Getting those huge gainers really makes a big difference. It can be difficult if you're trying to get 4 or 5 yards every single play to go all the way down the field. If you're getting those chunk plays, you can put up points pretty quickly. I think the one thing about this game that interests me quite a bit, though, is that West Virginia's pass defense is their big weakness. Against the run, they've actually been pretty good so far this year. 48th in the country, so not great, but pretty good against the run. West Virginia was also more cautious last week. They had Daggy in at quarterback. Kendall had been throwing a lot of picks. I think West Virginia probably is wanting this game to be lower scoring. I don't think they want to get into a shootout with Oklahoma State. I don't think they have the horses to win a game like that. So if you look at West Virginia, I think they want to play it cautious, see if they can win a lower scoring game. Some sharp money on the under so far. I think I would agree with that. I would tend to want to play the under instead of the over in this one. I feel like, some people want to take West Virginia in a spot like this, just grabbing the number. If this number keeps coming down, I see -7, -105 on Oklahoma State. If we get a 6.5, I'll be tempted to take Oklahoma State. I just don't think West Virginia is actually that good. And Oklahoma State, while they do have a bit of a look-ahead factor, I think that they've shown that they're pretty good even in these spots. Gundy is able to coach them up well enough to where if this gets down to 6.5, which it might, considering the leading indicators here, I think Oklahoma State is the side that I would prefer to play. And like I said, I do lean to the under also.
I'm with you, and I'm glad you said that because I didn't want to I don't want to show my hand until I heard from you. Yeah, I am leaning Oklahoma State seriously here, and I think you're right about 6.5. I think that'd be great if we can get a 6.5 here, and maybe some of that plus money home dog, which will trend that line in that way. Because I'm not necessarily a numbers better. I am more of a tactical player myself, so definitely love what you said there. I'm glad you're on that side, so you might have taken me over the edge on that one. Well, since you're Kyle Hunter, I had to throw in one of these type of games, and it's not FCS. No worries. It's still an FBS game, but it might as well be. You have South Alabama versus Georgia State, and this was at 11, and I just saw it at 10. I wrote down 11, but Georgia State's now down to -10. Over unders 56.5, and I'll start on this one. I thought that Georgia State's quarterback, Dan Ellington, wasn't going to play against App State, and I guess he gave it a shot. I don't know how long he went in that game, but I think it might have been longer than his backup. And the reason I ask you about this ugly game, Kyle, is because South Alabama's covered their last 5 out of 6 games. They haven't won in the FBS yet. They have one win, and it was against an FCS team. Do they have motivation here for that? Is this a sneaky spot if Ellington's not playing? Can South Alabama get some margin here? Have you got a chance to look at this ugly one?
Well, I want to say, first of all, that, I was surprised when you sent me this game. I was kind of looking at it thinking, I wonder what his angle is here on this game. This is a game that is pretty far under the radar because South Alabama is 1-9 on the year. You would think they don't have anything to play for, but like you said, they've been still playing hard. I wouldn't want to lay points with Georgia State if Ellington's not totally healthy. I don't think Georgia State's defense is the type of defense that you want to have laying points. Georgia State's giving up almost 7 yards per play. They're 126th in the country. Very, very bad defensively. When I'm laying a significant amount of points, I don't want to have that bad of a defense, especially if the quarterback's not totally healthy. I think my favorite play here, and I have to say, I was kind of thinking as we were going through the other games, your listeners are probably going to think, I think Kyle just likes the under in every single game. So I kind of like the over in this game. So I promise you, I don't just like the under all the time. I see this one down to 56 at some books. Mm-hmm. If you look at Georgia State's games, especially if Ellington is going to play and is at least somewhat healthy. So we're going to want to get some update here as we get later in the week as to whether it will be Ellington playing or Brown playing most of the time here at quarterback. But Georgia State's games have been so high scoring consistently, regardless of who they've played against, that I think that this is a game that could be fairly high scoring, especially when you consider that South Alabama doesn't really have anything to play for at this point. They've had, a really disappointing season overall. They've been good ATS lately, but they have even had some higher scoring games here lately than what they had earlier in the season. So I would say South Alabama, Georgia State over is my strongest lean in this game.
Great call. I think there's two ways to look at this. I think if Dan Ellington doesn't play, a money line play on South Alabama wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. They need I think they're motivated, just like you said. I think they're going to really try to get a win, an FBS win here, and this is a great opportunity if they're playing against a backup quarterback. I like how they played Texas State and kept it really close, and just like I said, 5 out of the last 6 games they've been really trying. And I think you're right about Dan Ellington. Why would you bet South Alabama if Dan Ellington's playing when he beat teams like Tennessee and a couple other big names? I've been winning on some overs on Georgia State, so hit that Georgia State Troy game. Dan Ellington, he's a very good quarterback. I just don't know anything about their backup. I don't think their backup has played much at all. So for sure on the over there, like that side of it if Dan Ellington's playing, and I didn't even think of that. So great call on that one, Kyle. A little bit next game is one that I know a little bit more about, obviously. Purdue versus Wisconsin. Wisconsin is laying 24.5 points, while the over-under is 48. So they're saying Purdue's not going to score about 10 points in this game, mostly. Have you got a chance to look at this?
Yeah, I mean, these games are difficult because, you have a team laying 24.5 points with that low of a total, and you say, by default, you kind of should think I want to lean to the dog when you're getting that many points with a low total. However, I don't want to back Purdue here. Purdue is a team that, I think in the long run, Jeff Brom's going to do a good job with this team. I really do. And I think that Purdue could be a team that we find a lot of value on next year. Based on how bad they've been so far this year. But in this spot, I just don't trust them. Purdue's defense has not been good stopping the run. We all know how good Wisconsin is at running the football. And I think that the problem for Wisconsin all year has been that they just need better quarterback play against top teams. And when they play really good defenses, it can be difficult for them. They're not playing a really good defense here. Wisconsin's defense has been really impressive so far this year. Purdue, down to playing a third-string quarterback here most of the year. I just don't trust Purdue to score many points at all. I'm curious to see your lean in this game. I think if I had to play this game, I'd probably take Wisconsin. And I will say, as a general rule, I almost never lay, 24.5 points with a total of 48. So I don't think I'm going to bet this game, but, that would be my slight lean here.
Yeah, I mean, the spread's over half the total. That's
right.
Very strange. But at the same time, I don't have a play on it yet, and I'm not sure if I am, but there's no way I can really bet Wisconsin here. The spread is going up due to the way everyone's, the talk. Think logically. Everyone saw them beat Michigan handily and Michigan State handily at home. And so they're going to say, well, Wisconsin lost at Illinois, at Ohio State, but they're just, the home team that runs over people. But that was early in the season, and Michigan kind of got jumped there a little bit. There was a call that kind of went Wisconsin's way with that catch. They reviewed it and said it hit the ground. It was a lot, how things kind of spin off. Well, in Michigan State, now look at them. I mean, Illinois went there and beat them.
Right.
Michigan beat them by 30 some points. Michigan State really, so. Wisconsin, they're possibly looking ahead here. They might be looking past Purdue to Minnesota. They have a huge game against Minnesota here, And it's not that the coaches always look ahead, but it's in the players' minds. It's hard to coach that out of people, and it's only the best of the best coaches really can. But Wisconsin can also get beat through the air, as you saw. There's some sneaky plays that they can get. They have that kind of defense that they're not the bend don't break defense. They're I'm going to pressure you and you're going to have to beat me over the top defense. And Aiden O'Connell, he's doing okay at Purdue. He threw a 68% completion rate the last few games that he's played. Jeff Brom, I have so much respect for him. He's a very, very good coach. He's got film on Wisconsin. He's gonna stack the box and make Cone try to beat them, and that's the way you play them. And if they're flat, they're going to be. This could be a lot closer game. I think one of the key things that I'm going to wait for is Rondale Moore. He's been questionable every single game for the last month and a half. Right. Is this one he's actually going to come in, because that's the kind of talent that beats Wisconsin. 4.3 speed. This guy's going to be in the NFL. I'm waiting on him, too, because if he's playing, I will probably be playing Purdue, and I'm not saying I won't anyway, but 24.5 is a lot in a look-at spot. So that's my thoughts. Any final thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I agree with you that Moore means a lot to this team. They don't have that star playmaker without him, and, this is Rondale Moore is the best playmaker in the Big Ten when he's healthy. This is a guy that really is a huge deal of this Purdue offense. Purdue's not going to be able to run. They average 2.66 yards per carry. They have to be able to pass. It's a lot easier to pass if you have a guy like Rondale Moore. Without him, I'd be really scared to take Purdue in this game. So I don't think I like Purdue as much as you do in this one. It might be one of those where if you bet it based on the spot, you might not really want to watch this game because you want it to be ugly if you're taking Purdue.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of those things. Wisconsin can win by 23 points, and I'm happy both ways. But at least if they win by 50, my team won, and I lost a small bet. So I kind of look at it like that. But speaking about teams, Kyle, the last one I have to throw out with you is a team that you know very well. And being a fan of a team in first place it must be a cool thing, yet a little bit of nerve-wracking. So we have to talk about Penn State facing Ohio State here. The spread is minus 18 points. It's just funny to say they're playing Penn State. The spread's 18 points. Just saying that kind of blows your mind a little bit. Over under is 56.5. This Ohio State team, they're number one in my power ratings. I'm going to let you go first since these are your Buckeyes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I have a big rooting interest in this game. I will say that, and I think your listeners probably already know this, that I don't just say I would back Ohio State every time. Actually, more times than not, I kind of try to take a pessimistic view on Ohio State because I don't want to be, the rose-colored glasses or scarlet glasses guy. So, Ohio State's 8-2 ATS. It worries you a bit to be continuing to lay the points with Ohio State because you figure the market has to try to catch up to them at some point. But I will say in this game, I don't think Penn State's quite as good as some people do. I think if you look at Penn State and go back for the course of the season, look at who they've played and who they beat early in the season. Just not a very good schedule. I mean, they obviously played Idaho and Buffalo. And that Buffalo game, I remember all the way back to week 2. The Buffalo outgained them in week 2 and then lost by, 30-some points and didn't even cover the spread. That was a crazy game. Mm-hmm. And then they beat Pitt in a close game where if Pat Narduzzi didn't just think we should kick field goals from the half-yard line, Pitt maybe could have won that game. So Penn State's a team to me that, now they've played at Minnesota. I know they outgained Minnesota in that one, but they did lose. They gave up quite a few points. They gave up a lot to Indiana, too. Indiana moved the ball on them well. That was a game where I had Indiana plus the points. Did cash in on that one. I think that Penn State's defense is a bit overvalued. And that being the case, I'm worried to back them in this game because Ohio State's offense is really good. I mean, this is a Buckeyes offense that can run or throw. However you want to play them, I think they have the advantage. Penn State as the number 1 rush defense in yards per carry allowed, but they haven't played a run offense like Ohio State. Penn State has been beaten by the pass pretty badly here in some of their games recently. I think Ohio State can do the same thing if they need to. As I look at this game, I think Penn State can score some. Ohio State's defense is number 1 in yards per play allowed so far this year. Obviously, they've been really good. Maybe they're not the best defense in the country, but they're one of the top 2 or 3. And Penn State, to me, they played a lot of close games with Ohio State. So the first inclination is you say, man, I should probably grab the points. 18's a lot of points. They play a lot of close games. I think there's more of a talent disparity this year than there has been in a lot of these games in the last few years between Ohio State and Penn State. I also think that, Ohio State is unlikely to overlook this game, even though they have Michigan coming up next. It would really surprise me if Ohio State isn't ready for this one. They've had some really spirited battles against Penn State. If I was playing a side here, I would take Ohio State. 18 points is a lot to lay. I think Ohio State can make a statement in this game, though. This is an Ohio State team that is, to me, on a different level than Penn State right now. I think Penn State's a good team. I think Ohio State's an elite team, at least top 2 or 3 in the country. And like you said, I have Ohio State first in my power ratings, just barely. But, I think Ohio State could win this game by quite a few points, and it wouldn't be too surprising to me. This is not one that I'm running to bet Ohio State and just lay the points. But, if you want some action on this game to bet it small while you watch it, I would take Ohio State here.
Yeah, man, great breakdown there. It's there's a way I've been betting this game, and it's kind of been working out for me in the last few years. And I know there's been consistency on the Penn State coach with Franklin, but now as quarterback, McSorley's gone, but obviously Clifford's been amazing, and Ryan Day's been with Ohio State. It's not like a huge change here with Urban Meyer to him. It looks like the same team to me, the same plays anyway, with some more talent at quarterback, some better skill positions even than last year. It's like when you lost Paris Campbell and guys like that, it's like reload like nothing, but there's a way I play this game, and I'm going to do it again. My power ratings have Ohio State by 18.5. And I know you mentioned if they blow out them, they're definitely not going to look ahead to Michigan, but maybe if they do win by 30 points, you might have to bet Michigan. I don't know. That's something for next week, but it's just funny to me that Penn State has a pretty impressive 1.7 yards per play, yet Ohio State has a 3.7 yards per play, number 1 in the nation for discrepancy there, which is 2 full yards better than Penn State, 3.7 to 1.7. Do the math, easy. These games, they've been the best, man. I love these games because they always seem to come down to the fourth quarter. Now, maybe it won't this time, but Penn State, they seem to choke in some games, in the second half. If they would have had one more quarter against Michigan, they would have choked that game. I mean, with a lead. And I'm not saying they're going to be a lead, but the way I like to play this is I like to play Penn State in the first half, and I like to play Ohio State in the second half if they cover. Now if Ohio State's blowing them away in the first half, I won't play the second half. But I think Penn State's going to be ready. You could tell they're kind of looking ahead to this game. You have guys like Gross Matos, that's just fantastic. Micah Parsons. Great defensive players, and they're eventually going to wear out because Ohio State can turn up the tempo, and that's how they do it. They wore out Wisconsin, and it's the way Ohio State does things. And they have some spread plays where the offense doesn't have to, the line doesn't have to block as much. They just stand up and it's thrown to a receiver screen, and the defense is still going at full speed. That's how defenses get worn out, and Ohio State's masters at that. So my idea is just to bet them in the first half. I would think like a 10.5 it's going to be. And possibly if that covers, you bet Ohio State the same amount or better in the second half. I think I'm going to play it that way, Kyle. And any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you on that. I think that could be a good look. Or even if you wanted to if you think Ohio State wins fairly big, you could just stay off of the game and then try to play them in the second half only. Mm-hmm. There's different ways of looking at it. The only thing I wanted to say that I do disagree with one thing you said, and this is just as a Buckeyes fan. You said if they blow away Penn State, you might have to bet Michigan in the next game, and I have to tell you, I draw the line there. I'm not going to do that. No matter. I won't bet Ohio State in that game either, but betting Michigan against Ohio State, I have to draw the line there.
I had to mess with you a little bit on that one, Kyle. Harbaugh's a habitual choker, and to be honest with you, Harbaugh's record in big games is terrible. But is this the one that you back him on? I don't know, but I know that you definitely can't bet Michigan against your own team. So I had to throw that in there, my man. But I don't know. We have a minute left. So is there any games you want to throw out real quick or sides that you like?
As I'm looking at the board here, just a couple games that I think are pretty interesting real quick. Texas and Baylor. And I think this is a really fantastic game based on Baylor's coming off that huge disappointment of last week, and yet they're getting the money here. They go from -3.5 up to -5.5, even 6 in some spots. I think that says a lot about what the market thinks about Texas to me. Baylor is the side I'd rather have here, but I'm scared to lay the points with Baylor after they just lost, what was kind of their Super Bowl game. So I think that's a really interesting handicap there, and a game that I would keep a close eye on this weekend. Another one I kind of like here is Iowa. This price has gotten a little bit away from us, Illinois and Iowa. I think Illinois is a team that may be a good fade here the rest of the year. Maybe not in this spot now that it's north of 14 points, but if I was one of your listeners, I'd look for spots to go against Illinois. They've been very fortunate. This is a team that, if you look at their statistical profile, it really screams regression. So I think Illinois could be a good team to go against here the rest of the season.
Yeah, I actually like Illinois over the 14.5, and I did play that, but the only reason I did is because their last 4 games, they've been really trending up, and I saw Lovey's speech to them. So Iowa's not a huge margin team, but I've heard a lot of people going against Illinois this week, so you could be right, but I made a small play on Illinois, but they're going to have a letdown coming up here anytime soon. They still are not even, I don't even think, a net positive in yards per plays. Well, how can our listeners benefit from your knowledge and plays, Kyle?
Well, you can head over to huntersportspicks.com. Check out my packages available. I'm also going to run a special here for Odds Breakers listeners. If you want my college basketball season pass, $575, you can send me a message, Kyle@huntersportspicks.com, or message me at KyleHunterPicks on Twitter. It's going to be a lot of plays for the course of the season in college basketball. I've done really well, especially on those totals in college basketball over the years. So if you're interested in college basketball handicap, or consider going with me there. And the other thing I'll say is that, if you don't want to pay, that's okay. You can sign up for my free picks newsletter over at huntersportspicks.com. 89 and 55 run and those free plays. I do with a lot of things with teasers, team totals, things like that I can't post on some of the sites because, that's not an option. But we've been able to make the free picks newsletters clients here quite a bit of money.
All right, well, that's fantastic, Kyle. Make sure you guys check that out. Kyle is the best in totals that I've seen. He has lots of plays in NCAA basketball. Kyle, thanks so much for coming on. It's obviously we love talking sports, basketball. You did a fantastic job. Good luck this weekend on all of your plays, my man. Enjoy the games.
All right, thanks a lot, man.
All right, now it's time for some college football Week 13 free plays from yours truly. I'm going to start right away with Tennessee versus Missouri. Missouri giving about 5 points. Over under is 45. Recency bias can be bad when you look at just one game, but it can be kind of good over a number of games or a trend, progression or regression. Larger sample size is what you're looking for here. And this is kind of the time of year in college football where you can make some of those determinations. Tennessee started out the season very poor, losing to teams like Georgia State and BYU. But if you look at what they've done lately, they won 4 of their 5 last games. And that one they lost out of the 5 was Alabama, and they were keeping up with Bama for most of that game. Missouri went on a nice run of winning some games in the beginning of the season, but then they lost to Vanderbilt. And since then, they got shut out by Georgia, only scored a little, like 5-6 points at home versus Florida. I think it was like 7 points, something like that. Looking at the numbers, Missouri's best win was against Ole Miss. Well, Tennessee at least beat Kentucky here. Missouri got their butts beat by Kentucky. Tennessee has had a harder schedule. I don't know why they're the dogs in this game. Both of these teams are trying to make a bowl, so the motivation should be there. But I also think that the game's going to be very close and closer than 5 points. So we're going to take Tennessee plus 5, and it's about a 2-star premium shared play.
And so then I got a call from him saying, we don't have to worry about money no more. And I said, that's good. One less thing.
Next game, Texas versus Baylor. Baylor given 5 points. Over under is 59. And so what we're looking at here is, I know you've heard it so many times, but that doesn't make it any less respectable or important here. Tom Herman is a dog, all right? Yeah, I know. But Baylor had their hearts ripped out of their chest last week, blowing an undefeated season, blowing the game to Oklahoma. They were leading by so much, and they let Oklahoma score. Their defense got tired. But they're also at the same time being very fortunate to cover. They're outgained by 200 yards. All right? 200 yards. That's a lot. So, is Texas good this year? No, not really. I mean, not for their standards. But one thing that I do know is that Sam Ehlinger, he keeps them in the games. He really does. This kid can be down to anybody, and somehow he finds the open receiver, wills Texas back into pretty much every game that they play. Last week, kept it close against Iowa State. Eventually, only lost by 2 points. They lost to Oklahoma by only 7 points, and if you remember, they only lost to LSU also by 7 points. Two teams that are way better than Baylor. Now the Longhorns are facing another Texas team as an underdog, and it kind of spells disrespect. Texas is big brother. Baylor is little brother. Texas has every reason in the world to get up for this and to beat down their little brother here. Baylor doesn't need to win this game to win the Big 12 because they can beat Kansas next week and still get another shot at Oklahoma. So, you also could say that Baylor still wants to win out and have a chance at the college football playoffs. I think that ship has sailed. Right now they're kind of regrouping. They have to play a tough Texas team. Texas is going to come in there pissed off. I'll take the 5 points gladly. Texas +5, and it is a 2-star premium shared play. Last game for college, Duke versus Wake Forest. Wake Forest is laying 7 points. Over-under is 53. Am I looking at this right? A Wake Forest game only has a total of 53 against a bad defense. I think it's actually down to 52 or 51 in some books too. This number factors in a huge overreaction to Wake only scoring 3 points versus Clemson. I mean, come on, it's Clemson. It's Wake plays the fastest game in all of college football. And Duke isn't exactly slow either. The numbers also factor in that Duke hasn't scored much in their last 4 games, but they played against 3 tough defenses and had 1 stinker against Syracuse. This was kind of Duke's flat spot in the year. Now, I like Cutcliffe, and I think he's going to get these kids motivated here. Duke gives up 30 points per game and 5.4 yards per play. Wake scores 32 points per game and averages 5.7 yards per play. Before Duke hit the bad streak, they scored 41 versus Georgia Tech, 30 versus Pitt, good defense like Pitt, 45 at Virginia Tech, and 41 against Middle Tennessee. They have it in them. And I just think Wake Forest defense is extremely weak. You saw that in week 1 when they played Utah State. Duke, they rank 31st in pace of play. That's kind of in the upper 75th percentile here. So they're not exactly slow. Both teams have a shot here to make a bowl game. I'm taking the over. I would not doubt if this game gets into the 70s here. I don't even know why it's so low. So I'm making this a 3-star premium share play.
Where's my money, bitch?
All right. And obviously the little bonus for you guys, as I discussed, I am taking Penn State plus 10.5 in the first half of the Ohio State Penn State game. I like the hook there. I think there's some value. Whether it happens or not, we'll see. And I'm going to take Ohio State in the second half for 2 stars as well, as long as Ohio State's not winning by over 20 points. So there's your bonus play for college football. NFL action. And I got to tell you, the injury report's pretty fat in a lot of teams. So I'm actually waiting to make some more plays here. And I do have a few more than obviously I'm giving out. But at the same time, that Houston Texans versus Colts game is huge. The Colts have 1 win on them already. I think the Colts pretty much secure the division if they beat the Texans here, as long as they just win one of the games against I think if they win their last game against Tennessee. I think they played Tennessee once, though, so maybe this is for the division. I'll have to double-check that, but there's some pretty big games this weekend in the NFL. But we're going to start off with Tampa Bay versus Atlanta. Atlanta laying 4.5 points, over-under is 51.5. Here's my spot where the power ratings favor the dog by 3 points on a neutral field, yet they are 4.5 dogs at Atlanta. So, this should be more of a pick'em game, in my opinion, according to the power ratings. But Atlanta's hot. How the hell they beat the Saints? How did they beat Carolina? Where'd this come from? But how long can they keep this hot streak running? I'm not sure, because Tampa's a little bit desperate themselves here. The Buccaneers, had this. They had that game close last week until Winston threw that pick 6 against New Orleans. The Buccaneers actually outgained the Saints by a few yards last week. Yeah, can't talk right now. And I'm wondering, why this line's so fat in Atlanta's direction here. I think the line got hit a couple times, and I think it actually opened up around 3. The Falcons have obviously kind of turned it around here, and they're obviously like their coach Dan Quinn here. But at the same time, Tampa Bay with Jameis Winston, with that defensive front, with the skill positions there, Cameron Brate's doing well, O.J. Howard's back. They have, obviously, Evans, a beast of a pass catcher. Ronald Jones has really been stepping up. This is the kind of game where I think that Winston can possibly even bring in a win and get this outright, because Atlanta still has weakness in their secondary there. So I don't think Devontae Freeman's necessarily going to be back, and if he is, he's not going to be that healthy. Bruce Arians is too good of a coach for this 4.5 point spread. So I am taking Tampa Bay Bucks plus 4.5 right here, and I think it's a good spot for them. Next game, we have Green Bay versus San Francisco. San Francisco laying 3 points over under 47.5. This one really stood out to me. Okay, and I know that the 49ers are a bit banged up. I think there's a shot that George Kittle plays. There's a shot that Emmanuel Sanders plays, but at the same time, they didn't really have Emmanuel Sanders the whole year, and Deebo Samuel's really stepped up. Kendrick Bourne's been stepping up, but Coleman's been stepping up if Brady doesn't play. And they still have Jimmy G there throwing the ball, and everyone's pretty capable there. My power ratings has the Niners favored by 5 points at home against the Packers, okay? Now, we all know Aaron Rodgers is very good, but there's two sides to the Packers that maybe not a lot of people are seeing, and the spread is starting to creep up, so maybe some people are. Many of their big wins have been at home, and they haven't played a lot of tough road games, but still, when you look at Green Bay, they're a great 6.5 yards per play at home, but when they're on the road, they're a measly 4.7, okay? 4.7. That's like at Bears territory. So, and they give up 6.2. They only are at 4.7 yards per play, and their defense gives up 6.2 yards per play. San Fran is at 5.7 yards per play at home, and they only give up 4.2. That's a 3 yard per play difference in home road splits. 3 yards per play. That's huge. Okay? That's huge. And, if you just went by the 3 yard per play difference, this should be like a 15-point spread. Now, we know that'd be crazy. We have the Packers with Aaron Rodgers. They're hot. Devontae Adams is back. They have a good team. But 3 still a little low there. And I still, even with the injuries, just looking at the home road splits, I have to play the Niners. I have to. And if you're a little worried about that too, you can also play the Niners with the under, and that's what I'm doing. Under 47.5, because the Niners, if they're that banged up on offense and they can't score the ball, there's a good chance that under hits. San Fran -3, 3-star premium shared play, and under 47.5 for 2 stars.
Business bad? Fuck you, pay me. Oh, you had a fire? Fuck you, pay me. Place got hit by lightning, huh? Fuck you, pay me.
Quick hitter, New England -6.5. It's going to be a 2-star premium shared. I'm wondering how the Patriots can be road favorites at Philly by 3.5, yet only be home favorites to Dallas at 6.5. That tells me that Philly at home would have been 9.5 points. I don't think the Eagles are 3 points worse than Dallas here. And obviously Dallas is another team who hasn't fared all that well on the road. So I know it's tough to take 6.5 points against a very strong Cowboys team with, obviously Dak's been playing out of his mind and he's an MVP candidate. But just think of it this way. This will make you feel better. It's Bill Belichick versus Jason Garrett. That's all you had to say. You had me at Belichick. Take the New England Patriots -6.5 at home, 2-star premium shared play. And now it is time for
The Sharp Side of the Force.
The Sharp Side of the Force is brought to you by uwager.lv. For a 50% bonus, please visit uwager. Use the promo code ODDSBREAKERS. Terms and conditions apply. All right, let's get into college football sharp sides. And we start with Colorado State at Wyoming. Colorado State, 22% difference between the number of tickets and the percent of the money. So Colorado State is a sharp side at Wyoming. Next one we have is a little bit of dual action on Nebraska. It's at -5, -4.5 in some books. 82% of the bets are on Nebraska, 87% of the money. Next one we have is sharp money on South Florida hosting Memphis at +14.5, a 35% difference between number of tickets and money. Sharp money on Texas Tech hosting Kansas State from +1 all the way to -2.5. 39% of the 39% is on of the tickets are on Texas Tech, but 78% of the money is on Texas Tech. That's a 39% difference between tickets and money. Texas A&M at Georgia, not quite enough. We have dual action on Wake Forest here from -6.5 to -7.5. 84% of the tickets on Wake, 89% of the money. Sharp money on West Virginia hosting Oklahoma State +7 down to +6.5. Pretty sure Kyle and I just talked about that, so we disagree. 24% difference between ticket and money there. We have sharp money on TCU at Oklahoma at +18, 21% difference. Sharp money on Troy at Louisiana, 21% difference between tickets and money on +14. Sharp money on Liberty at Virginia from +18.5 down to +17, a 24% difference between tickets and money. Sharp money on Iowa State hosting Kansas, -22.5 to -24.5, a 24% difference there. Sharp money on Arizona hosting Utah at +22.5, a 23% difference there. Thing went past the key number of 21. Sharp money on South Alabama at Georgia State, 21% difference there. We'll hear about Ellington, obviously. Dual action on Appalachian State, 66% of the tickets are on App State, but 94% of the money hosting Texas State at -28 to -30. Big spread there. Sharp money on Cal at +3, a 26% difference. Sharp money on Oregon State at Washington State from +12.5 down to +10.5, a 33% difference. Sharp money on Houston, +3.5 down to +3 at Tulsa, a 49% difference. It's a pretty big one. Sharp money on Arkansas at LSU at +43.5, a 34% difference on that one. Ugh, I don't know if I could bet Arkansas there. LSU doesn't seem to care about what they have on deck. They seem to run up the score no matter what. Dual action on San Jose State at UNLV from -4.5 to -6.5. 86% of the money is on San Jose State. Sharp money on Louisiana Monroe hosting Coastal Carolina at -6, a 21% difference. And that's about it for FBS. Sharp totals. We're going to start right out with Colorado State at Wyoming at over 50.5, a 34% difference. Sharp money on Kansas State at Texas Tech's over 54.5 to 55, 38% difference, and 99% of the money is on that over. Dual action on the Texas A&M versus Georgia under 46 down to 44.5. 72% of the tickets are on the under, 98% of the money. Dual action on the Duke versus Wake Forest under. And that thing's now down to 50. And if you remember, that was a play on the over here. And I don't understand what they're seeing here. Quarterbacks look fine. 99% of the money is on the under there, but I am fading that. Sharp money on the under. Liberty at Virginia. Under 54.5, a 34% difference. Sharp money on the under Texas State at Appalachian State from 53 down to 51, a 36% difference. Sharp money on the under Michigan State at Rutgers from 45 down to 43.5, a 35% difference. 98% of the money is on the under. Kind of dual action right there too. And last one, sharp money on Florida International hosting Miami's under at under 49. 53% of the tickets are on the under, but 97% of the money, a 44% difference. Let's get into sharp NFL sides. And right away, we'll go with Denver at Buffalo from plus 5.5 down to plus 4, a 23% difference in tickets to money. Sharp money on the Jets hosting Oakland at plus 3, a 31% difference between tickets and money. Sharp money on Tampa Bay at plus 4.5. We like that one. 20% difference between tickets and money. And that's about it for sides. Anything for totals here? We have sharp action on the Jacksonville versus Tennessee over 41 to 41.5. A 29% difference there, right? The fringe. And sharp money on the under Baltimore at LA from 49 down to 46.5. A 39% difference there. That's a ballsy one. I don't know if I could bet the under in a Baltimore game at any point right now. Well, all right, my friends. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you have any questions, please feel free to tweet us at the Odds Breakers. If you're a handicapper and would like to contribute, we'd love to hear from you. We could use an NBA guy, possibly a little bit of baseball. We'd love to hear. Just visit us at theoddsbreakers.com or tweet at us. Have a fantastic weekend, my friends. Enjoy the games and go get some wins.